That is the judge in very legalese terms. I think in this ruling did a couple of things: dismiss this frivolous lawsuit yet again, but also in this ruling, I think Judge Mary Day, he reaffirms New York Times versus Sullivan. Yeah. He affirms that we're just not going to play games with the free press. I'm wondering if you think this is, I understand this is in Supreme Court, so officially there's no precedent here, but do you think this is a signal to to other judges that they too need to stand up and reaffirm the law and the next suit, because this won't be the last one, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is what Donald Trump does in court. I mean, remember when the Department of Justice sued judges in Maryland, and a judge that was appointed by Trump himself said this is totally unacceptable, a complete violation of the separation of powers, not political, nothing, complete violation. Then you have this court today saying we're not even letting this pass go. You know, you don't even have to respond. We're denying this, and you can refile and come back into the courtroom if you have good arguments, which of course the president doesn't. And so this is really indicative, by the way, of what we are seeing in the courts across the board. I know we're going to talk a lot about the First Amendment tonight, because this has been quite a week with the president attacking the First Amendment. But what we have in a number of cases, he is losing before Republican judges, Democratic judges, judges he himself appointed, because what he's doing is just totally beyond the pale.
Can I just note, New York Times v. Sullivan is the law that created modern libel law, right. Correct? Correct. Okay, just Absolutely. So we're all on the same page.
Yes.
There's a continuum here happening, Sky. There's what is happening, his lawsuit against the New York Times, and there is what we have watched come from his FCC chair. You are among those, join the club, who have a lot of questions about exactly what it is that transpired. You have filed a FOIA request. That means you are asking to see calendars, emails. You want to know about the conversations that were happening behind the scenes. What are the questions that you have?
Well, we want to know, what is this administration doing to deny the American people the freedom of the press and to violate the First Amendment? Who is influencing this administration? I testified in Congress last year in a big panel where I was the only person at the dais that did not write a chapter of Project 2025, where the chair of the FCC was there. And before Congress and everyone, he said that he was committed to the First Amendment. But what we're seeing is that's not what is happening in this case. So we want the text messages, we want calendar invites, we want to understand who and what this commission has been meeting with, what has been going on, and we're going to get to it in this investigation.
You know, it's interesting in so many ways, Chrissy, when you listen to the president, the little man, crying foul about, oh, you know, they say such bad things about me. You know, we got to deal with this. Let's take a quick listen to the president now and then on free speech.
They give me only bad publicity for the press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away.
I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents.
Well, that was clearly all a lie, because this idea of bringing free speech back to America when you cannot comment freely on the events of the day, whether you are in the media or outside the media. But the reality for Donald Trump is that he himself is a public figure. And under defamation law, the burden is on him to prove that the statements made about him were made with actual malice, quote, end quote, actual malice, meaning that there is intent to defame this man. False or reckless disregard for the truth. So when a newspaper, a television program, a sitcom, an editor is writing about events in which this man freely participates as president of the United States, comments on freely as president of the United States, and the country and the media respond to that, how is that defamation?
It isn't. And they can't prove that there's any. I mean, they allege that these reporters, that the New York Times has such intense hatred of the president. And again, the quote that that stuck out to me was that they were acting in a deranged way. I mean, they can't prove that in a court of law. I'd like to see them try. Again, the statements that were made were not false. They're certainly not knowingly false. I mean, you look at the sourcing for not only the book Lucky Loser, but you look at the sourcing for their articles. And it's just, these are meticulous examinations of 20 years of tax records. They're going through his business records. They're conducting interviews. You have Mike Schmidt with, audio interviews of former cabinet members. Like, they're not just off the cuff, stating opinions. These are based in fact. And so, a defamation claim will fail. But this administration and unfortunately his lawyers don't actually explain to him what the First Amendment means. You had his attorney general saying she was going to prosecute hate speech. You had his deputy attorney general say that heckling could be a racketeering crime, which, if that were true, the whole Philadelphia Eagles fan base would be in jail. I mean, this is not serious. They don't understand. Go look at their own DOJ website. It says that, the First Amendment protects free speech, and if there are beliefs that you find offensive, that is not enough to prosecute a case. Go check your own manual. And then you have the FCC chair, who I don't think most Americans want to know who Brendan Carr is. He should not be part of the conversation. And he's talking like mob muscle. We're going to do this the easy way or the hard way. What is this conversation? And you had a great post by Liz Cheney today where she was reminding Brendan Carr that, as a government official, you cannot attempt to coerce private parties to punish or suppress views that the government disfavors. That has been universally reaffirmed by the Supreme Court. So, again, I think you go and have both sides of the aisle here really trying to school this administration on what free speech actually means.
We're talking about schooling this administration. We have breaking news on a story that we have been following all day, Simone, and that is that U.S. Attorney Eric Siebert, who oversees the federal prosecutor's office in the Eastern District of Virginia, as you will recall, he was tasked by the president with pursuing a case against New York AG Letitia James over supposed mortgage fraud, told colleagues late Friday that he plans to resign. That is after being told by the president he would be fired or he could resign, and that he expects his assistant Maya Song will be demoted from her supervisory role. All of this is according to a person familiar with Siebert's discussions. Simone, Siebert was a loyalist. I mean, we are now at the point where a Trump loyalist, someone he appointed to the post, refuses to do his bidding, and even those folks are being told you can resign or you'll be fired.
Or you'll be fired. And, and shout out to our MSNBC colleague, Carol Leonnig, for this reporting, and Ken Delanian. I will add, their reporting also says that that Siebert was forced out and that employees in the office are distraught, with some in tears. This, to me, is, it's concerning. It's a word I've been using a lot lately, Sky. But this came from Bill Pulte. Yeah. There is reporting out there from NBC News, MSNBC, from ABC News that underscored, I believe I saw something from the Washington Post that underscored that it was Bill Pulte that recommended to the president and to the Department of Justice that there's some there as it relates to AG Tish James. And then when the U.S. attorney said that they couldn't, in Virginia, said they couldn't find anything, it was Bill Pulte, according to reporting, that told the president, well, then you should fire this guy and get somebody in there that is going to do the bidding. I feel like, is there a lawsuit here? I don't know. There's obviously improper things happening, but are these things illegal?
Well, I think, yes. I mean, I think, look, the president's operating unlawfully across the board. That is why he has faced over 400 lawsuits and legal actions since he's been in office, and we're only at about 230 days, even if it feels like 200 years.
243, by the way.
243, you're counting. So, I mean, this is why you see all these suits being filed, and we'll have to see as this progresses. But look, this is hugely concerning because you have a president that comes in and makes a bunch of allegations. They get denied. Then he appoints his own people to look at them. And they say, consistent with my professional responsibilities as an attorney and as a prosecutor, there is nothing here. And he's not satisfied with that. And then he wants to just keep digging until he can persecute his political enemies. And so the question really is, I'm glad that Ted Cruz came out today to say that he supports the First Amendment. I mean, that's helpful to see, I guess. But where are the president's allies? Where are the Republicans in Congress? Where are people? When is it going to be enough for them? And who is standing up here? Because I don't see it coming from anyone in the Republican Party standing up to this president to say you are going too far. I see them all still cowering to him.
Where's the oversight and accountability?
Where's the oversight and accountability? And to that point, Christy, we have about a minute, less than a minute left, but I do want to put this on the table because Sky really lays down an important point, and that is, for what I understand, for those Republicans, they've kind of reached a point where they're beginning to realize all of this could come back to bite them should and when the Democrats get control of Congress, the House, and the White House. And that what they're doing right now sets a precedent, particularly in this space, that they don't want to have to play with and deal with in 4, 5, or 6 years. With that in mind, you look at that feeling that's beginning to bubble, the Jimmy Kimmel firing. What does it say to the American people right now that they should really tune into and understand about what's happening, what this administration is doing, and how something as abstract as the First Amendment could impact their ability to stand on the street corner and express their opinion?
Well, I think there are two different things. You have a comedian who is, there to make people laugh, and he is being censored for his speech. But then you have people who are government officials who are out there telling the American people that crimes are being committed. And then they can't back it up. And then they can't actually bring charges because the evidence isn't there. And so, again, to me, that is reckless speech. That is speech where there is real harm. If you are saying somebody is a criminal, that they should have to resign their position, that they are someone who cannot be trusted and you are hurting their reputation, now you may have a case. That seems to be a real legitimate harm from speech. So I think, you really have to look at what the kind of speech is and what are the harms from it. And is this something that, really is actionable or not? And to me, you have two very different examples here where one clearly is not. One is a comedian telling a joke, and the other is someone, accusing a person of a crime with no evidence.